Hello, in this video I will give you a quick overview of how PASS is actually handling with the parameters and the standards, or whatever you want to call them, and how it's using them to compute the specification like the one that are proposed in this table and we saw in the previous video. So you remember that in page 2 we had to insert certain this case parameters, because the number of bed, the number of user are parameters that depends on the specific configuration. Then these value are these figures are basically put together with what are called in PASS in-house standards. In-house standards are basically another sort of parameters that are stored in the system to compute the features of the room, of the human resource, whatever thing we are trying to model. So the mechanism is basically always the same. PASS is storing here the parameters that is required to compute the specific feature. For example, we have here the minimum floor area. So for example, we have here 8 possible minimum size. When you are defining the properties of a specific room, you can choose within these 8 possible minimum size. What do I mean when you define the size, the feature of a specific room? PASS, as I think we already saw in a video, have a depository, have a page, a table with all the lists of all the rooms. Each room has a row that is defining its characteristics. We saw that in the first column is if the room belongs, is the description of the room in terms of the 3 possible setups. So if the room should be included in a basic configuration, in the typical configuration, or in an advanced one. Other information are, for example, and we go straight here, the one that deals with the specification. So, for example, in this column here, you have to attach a code to the room describing what is the characteristic of the minimum floor area. So, for example, in this case, reception has a code number 1 that correspond to this code here, which correspond to a figure of 7 square meters. And to provide a description is given, is associated to a room that is considered a small space where only staff have access to, so there is no patient moving around. So the principle is it's always the same. You have to tell PASS what is the characteristic of the room, and you tell him in this table. The way PASS understand the characteristics is by means of codes. Those codes are these numbers here, and they refer to these tables that actually translate the code into a more meaningful physical value. So in this case square meters, in this case square meter per bed, and etc. etc. So all the other parameters for the finishing, for example, for the human resource, they basically work in the very same way. For more information about this, I will recommend you to have a look at the video for the advanced user, where these things are explained with better details. And that's about it for this video. Goodbye.